Have you wondered what it would be like to be head of a tech company and to be female? Well, you're going to get the inside scoop today from Andrea Krupa. Plus, you're going to get some other tips that you can bring in to your family and to your relationships in order to be successful. Listen up.
You're listening to the Dynamic Women podcast. Each week, you'll be inspired by our global community of women. They'll share with you tools and stories to help you be dynamic in every area of life. He's your host, award-winning coach, and the CEO and founder of Dynamic Women, Diane Ralston.
Hello, my lovely dynamic women, and welcome to the Dynamic Women podcast. I am Diane Ralston, your host, and we have here today Andrea Krupa. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Diane. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. We get to jump into the topic of the importance of female leadership in technology. And I'm quite excited about this because of potentially the kind of uncovering that you're going to give us today into what it's really like to be in a male-dominated industry, what it's really like to be in tech, and to come in at a high position, but at a young age. So let me just share with the listeners a little bit more about where we're going to go. So the visibility of women in leadership positions, particularly in male-dominated industries, is fundamental in allowing young girls to envision a future in those worlds. Andrea Krupa's father founded a geospatial data processing company when she was 8. Throughout the history of the business, there have always been women in key roles with power, authority, and influence. Andrea's examples included women and mothers in STEM and leadership. She knew this was not the norm, but only actively experienced a difference when she was 29 and entered the family business and became exposed to the larger resource tech world. As a female leader in tech, her goal is to be visible and shift representation within the industry so that it reflects society. Awesome. Love where we're going. But the first question, Andrea, I have to ask is what is this geospatial data processing and what do you guys actually do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Most people aren't familiar with those terms, so it's not a surprising one. So geospatial data is really, in what we do is really we take data that's coming off of satellites. So satellites, when they're going around in their orbits, they're taking, the ones we use are taking photos, they're taking images. And those photos are coming in this really raw form. And so we take those photos and we create our own algorithms and processing softwares and combinations of physics and math to manipulate what's coming out of the satellites and then create products with it. So our main product is 3D modeling. So my husband likes to call it Google Earth on steroids. That's kind of what we do.
So you take kind of the images and you create an actual thing out of it.
Yes, we take the images and we they're in stereo, so they're the same spot from 2 angles, and we process them and then create an actual model of the Earth from it.
Wow. So so companies hire you to do specific models or life images?
Yeah, so generally most of our clients are in the resource world, so mining and energy. And in all areas of resource development, people need to know what's actually happening on the ground. So when they're in exploration phases of projects, they need to know where to drill or where to build roads or what's going on. And then when they're actually operational, they need to know where are things moving? Are they constructing things to how they're designed in the engineering designs? And we can, with our surveys, we can provide them data to be able to make some of those assessments.
Okay, cool. So now me and all the listeners, we understand more about what you do, which is not really as important to understanding you as a female in this world, but I think it's important for our brains to just get what are these other roles that are out there? And it's quite interesting to hear that you're doing this. And so
Mm-hmm.
what was it about like seeing, and how did seeing women in influential roles affect your decision to enter this industry? Because a lot of daughters of business owners say, nah, I don't want to enter the family business, but you did.
Yes, I think one of the things with my family business, and you mentioned it in the intro, is that throughout the history of the company, there have always been women in key roles. The company's first vice president was a female geologist. The company's spectral geologist is a female geologist. And that was really just, I don't think it was coincidence. I think these were very highly qualified women that my father brought on, and they really mentored me growing up. They showed me that you can be in these roles and have families
Yeah.
and be feminine and do all of these things. And so when I decided to come into the company, I don't think being a woman played into the decision. I think it was, this is interesting work that I enjoy. And that was the
Yeah.
decision. Yeah.
Oh, and really that's what people should be doing. Go
Yeah.
after a career you're interested in.
Yes.
That helps a lot if you're going to spend so many years of your life doing that role. That makes total sense. And actually, I have to give some kudos then to your dad or to the hiring team who look at the individual as a potential employee rather than as a female in this role or as a male in this role. The
Mm-hmm.
only other time I've really heard that gender did not really play a factor into it is actually when I was speaking to a Navy, what do you call them? Not a captain of submarines, a pilot. Anyway,
I'm not sure.
she was the first one, and and I said to her, "How did you feel as a female in a male-dominated industry?" And
Mm-hmm.
she said, "Actually, this is the one time in one job where I've never felt that gender played a part because you're like the only thing that could possibly be against you getting a promotion is yourself."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "That's impressive." So it sounds like you're in a really great company to be in. That's not always the case.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually had an interesting piece of feedback from one of my female staff recently. I was asking everybody in the company, what do you like about our culture? And she mentioned, I like the fact that we're diverse and we're a gender balanced company. When people ask me, oh, you're in tech, there must be a lot of men. She's like, I can say, no, actually, we're pretty much even. And I
Yeah.
had never put thought to that. I had never looked at our employee list and said, hey, are we even? What's happening here? And maybe I should have, but I think it just turned out from hiring on merit and hiring on skill,
Yes.
that's just how it shakes out in the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so maybe it wasn't something that had to be put in the policies and procedures because it was already happening. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What experiences would you say prepared you for this role?
Yeah, I have a bit of an interesting background. So I studied engineering, but then I left engineering and got a degree in recreational therapy and a master's in psychology, and then became a mountain guide. So it was a little bit of a eclectic beginning to my career. And I think all of those experiences played a role.
Yeah.
I think being a mountain guide, I was actually a hiking guide with the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides and did multi-week expeditions for Outward Bound Canada.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was also a very male-dominated industry. And I was given a lot of leadership very early on in my career with Outward Bound. I was made a lead instructor in my second season. So I was given a lot of experiences and a lot of time to develop as a leader in a male-dominated industry, guiding people often twice my age. And I think that really set me up to have confidence in my abilities and also have confidence in my ability to correct my own mistakes when I make them, because I do.
It sounds like you take responsibility for them.
I do try.
Not everybody does that. The blame game comes in.
I do try to do that. I do when I can.
Yeah. And it sounds like you can thrive in leadership roles, not just on the mental side of things with your engineering background and in the work you're doing currently, but in the physical world, you also, so being able to transfer those skills over is important. And I want the listeners to really hear this right now, is that you are every experience you've ever had, your every career you've ever had, and you get to pull from that the learnings and the skills of who you were being as well, and apply that to future roles, even if you make a complete pivot. So this could be seen as a complete pivot to go from a mountain guide to geospatial data. It can seem like that.
So, it can seem like there were a couple steps in between that I glossed over.
Your degree.
Yes. So there's my degree. I also started a company after my degree called Hemisphere Adventure. And so I did leadership and communication training in the outdoors, so in the wilderness. So I would take teams or leaders, groups of people into perceived risk situations, so rock climbing or expeditions, something like that, and help them develop their communication and leadership skills. So when I came into the company, what it was more my role when I came into the company was much more around leadership development, team building, team dynamics, and then I sort of grew into the role that I'm in now over the years.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. How about your psychology background? How did your academic foundation and that prepare you for the challenges now and working in a male-dominated environment?
I think that prepared me in a few ways. I think one of the ways, at least my psychology background from all the way from my education was formulated, it was very much around understanding your own biases and perceptions and assumptions to then be able to make sure that you're not transferring those onto other people. So in the psychology world, it's making sure you're not being able to transfer them onto your clients. And one of the flip sides of that is you also get the ability or develop the ability to be able to recognize when people might be transferring onto you things that aren't really yours. So if I'm in a situation and someone is treating me in a certain way and I'm reacting to it, I kind of have the ability to look a little bit from the 10,000 foot and say, oh wait, this isn't me. This is this person's biases. This is this person's beliefs and perceptions. And maybe it's around my age, or maybe it's around my gender, whatever it might be, and separate myself emotionally as much as I can. I'm obviously human and not a robot, but separate myself emotionally from that and find alternative solutions to maybe the way I approach the conversation, maybe deciding, hey, that thing is not for me in this work, or not for my business, or whatever that might be. And so I do think that self-awareness has really helped. I also think it's helped me learn how to navigate some potentially difficult or undermining situations without taking it on.
Yeah. And now this makes me want to ask the question, and maybe people listening are feeling the same thing. It's like, okay, I know I don't have a psychology degree, but how do we do that? How do we not? Because this is where we can get maybe into some real tangible, either questions we can ask ourselves, statements we can follow, steps we can have. Like, how do we not transfer onto others? And how do we know when others are transferring to us? What can we do?
I think the
I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, no, and that's okay. I think that's a very fair and legitimate question. I think a big part of it is, or a big part of what I do is recognize as much as I can my reactions to what's going on. So a lot of it is about, if I'm in a meeting with someone and I'm starting to feel tense or defensive or uncomfortable, it's being able to then take a step back a little bit and say, okay, what is happening? Like, why am I feeling these things? Why am I having these kinds of responses? And seeing, like, is it, you know, is it something someone's saying? Is it a tone of voice? Like, it's a little bit about slowing down the process, slowing down the reactions, and trying to pull them apart a little bit. And it's hard when you're in a boardroom and you're having these reactions and you're saying, okay, what do I do? And so honestly, the biggest thing I do is if I start noticing I'm feeling uncomfortable, it's almost like it's a little switch goes off. Hey, something's going on. Take a deep breath. Maybe say something in my mind like, okay, calm down, Andrea. Like, what's happening here? I talk myself through it and then start to think, okay, what is happening and how can I approach it? Or maybe I need to just exit the situation somehow. And so how do I exit the situation?
Yeah.
So it's, for me, and everybody is different. For me, it's a lot about knowing what it feels like in my body and having that sort of trigger me to say, okay, these are the things and these are the steps that I need to take in order to manage this right now and not say or do something that I'm going to have to clean up in the next board meeting or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Because that, I think that's an important professional skill, but it's just about slowing down and then being able to have, if there is a follow-up conversation I need to have, be able to have those from a place where have thought it through and I'm calm about it and not reactive.
Yeah.
As much as I can.
Yeah. And I'm hearing too, I'm not sure if everyone listening is catching this, but I'm hearing too that this can be used as a mom to chill out and not take the other person's emotions and react and talk yourself through it. And same with your partner. It could be that. It could be with like the mom on the playground, or there's in so many situations where this really can be brought into play, and trusting the intuition on it and taking that time before you react. Because if we react too quickly, it can harm the relationship, as you said. We can.
Yeah. Yes.
100%. Yeah.
And I do use this with my children and my spouse. And I should mention that this is a family business. So, so sometimes the executive room is full of family members that I then also, go to Sunday dinner with. need to make sure that all of the, as much as I can, all of the dynamics are being managed.
Yeah. And so is your father still in the business?
He is. He's still the CEO. So he is the CEO of the business. He's still kind of an intellectual powerhouse. So
and who else in the family is involved?
So at this point, it's really my father, my mother, my cousin's wife, and myself.
Wow. So cool. I'm sure I could pick your brain on so many things regarding family, business, relationships, and coordinating all that. But let's keep on track here with the, being a woman in this industry. When did you realize it wasn't the norm for women to be in STEM and leadership roles?
Yeah, so I grew up in a bit of a bubble when it comes to that. I did. I have no problem admitting that. I did know as a kid that, I had one friend whose mom was an engineer, and that was the only outside of the business. That was the only engineer science technology person that was a female that I knew of, but it didn't really occur to me that, hey, most of my friends' moms aren't engineers or
Yeah.
physicists. It didn't really occur to me because I saw it so much in the company.
Yeah.
And then I went to engineering, and it just happened that my year at University of Calgary was 45% women. So I
Wow.
went into a year of engineering
Yeah.
that was almost 50-50. So there was definitely some disciplines of engineering that had more women than others. And that was, there were more women in civil engineering than electrical engineering in my year. It could be
Yeah.
different now, I'm not sure. But it was still not weird. It was still not
Mhm.
it was almost equal. And then when I actually entered Photosat, when I entered the company, and we're going to trade shows and conventions and having client meetings and joining different technology associations, that I realized, hey, more often than not, I'm the only woman in this room. And I'm
Mm.
definitely the only, most of the time, not always, young woman in this room. And that's when I was 29. I think I knew it cognitively, but it didn't really sink in until,
Yeah.
we're having conversations and I'm like, oh, I'm the only one who's a female. That is interesting. And not that science and math is not gendered at
No.
all. So when you're talking about the technical aspects, that doesn't matter. But when you're chit-chatting or doing small talk, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more obvious that there's some differences.
Yeah, and it's funny when I get into the speaker world and sometimes in the high level business masterminds and such. It's so often that it's 90% men, or if not all men. And I was invited to partake in a very high level mastermind where they go away for a week at a time, 4 times a year, and then they bring their wives. Like, this was part of the sales thing, and we all bring our wives. And I was like, well, I don't have a wife, so
Mm-hmm.
that look like? And I said, well, I have the kids and I'm the primary, to the school, back from school and everything. And my husband doesn't have the flexibility. I have no family around. And so it
Mm-hmm.
just made me laugh. I was like, well, what does everybody else do with their kids? Like, most of the guys have kids and they're like, oh, my wife takes care of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't come. And I'm like, well, yeah, and I go away to things and my husband, and we manage and such, but I thought it was quite interesting. And even all the kind of extracurricular activities that were happening outside of the mastermind time was things like, watching an NBA game or going fishing. And I'm like, what are the wives doing? They're like, oh, they go shopping and they go. And I was like, I want to do what the women are doing. So it's very interesting. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
imagining that some of that kind of plays out when you go to your
Yes,
tech.
I actually belong to a few executive groups, but I belong to an executive group and we have a retreat every year. And one of the retreats, one of the spouses' activities was flower arranging. And my husband was like, I'm not sure this is geared towards me
Yes,
particularly.
exactly. I know.
So we gave some feedback, and they had and I mean, there's some men that love flower arranging, and that's fine, and there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with that. It was just a very interesting scenario to be in.
Yes, yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
I think part of the kind of joy for your life is that you had all these role models. But what advice would you give to women who are entering tech and young girls who think like, that's really cool, like being an engineer sounds really interesting, or geospatial data is like, that's so cool, I want to be part of that? What advice would you give them, because they're not seeing as many role models as you did?
Yeah, and I think about that a lot, and I think that's part of what drives me to do interviews like this and speak about it. And there are some really great groups of women who are trying to help that. So I would recommend for, young people who are interested, young women who are interested, if you're in school and you're interested, there are specific groups for, you know, girls coding groups and girls
Mm,
robotics groups and camps, and it's great to do things co-ed, but sometimes it's really nice to be able to do these groups and know that you're not going to be the only girl in the room. And so looking for those specific activities that are geared towards girls can help, because it also does help to have a friend to do these things with. And so very coincidentally, my best friend in high school founded a technology company in London. So she's done incredibly well, very successful. She's the co-founder and COO, and we talk about what it's like to run a technology company and what it's like to run a software as a service company, and we get to connect on those things. But we've been friends since we were in grade 9 or grade 10. And so we've gone through this together. So I do think that finding those programs tailored to girls, if you're in those kind of age ranges, and making some connections with other girls is helpful, because we do talk about things like, when we've had a meeting where we felt a little dismissed or talked down to, I can call her and get her perspective. And then for women who are a little older, so maybe out of the school age, there's a group called Women in Mining. There's a Vancouver-based group for women in technology, and they have mentorship programs and outreach programs to girls and women. Because I do think if you don't have those role models, there are ways to find them and to connect, because that is really important. And I wish it wasn't up to the younger women to find them. And I think one day it won't be. One day it will just be very visible and very obvious, and the role models will be everywhere. But right now it's a little bit of seeking it out and finding that network.
Yeah. And so dynamic women, you need to also be thinking for yourselves. You're not a girl, not a young girl. Maybe you are, but be thinking about, am I surrounded by people who I would really feel are my peers, and who I feel that I can, whether they're male or female, that I feel I can open up to and talk through some of my challenges in my career, and to also have role models, and to continue to have role models, even as you build in your success, to have other people ahead of you. And maybe it gets to the point where you're like, I can't find anyone in my industry who is doing what I'm doing or ahead of me. You can at least find someone in another industry who would have similar challenges, or have gotten through those similar challenges. So I think that's what I'm taking from Andrea, from this piece in particular, is that need to continue to have that.
Yes, and I agree. And I do think that for people who aren't young women anymore, we are at a point in time where, if in the technology world, there are women who are more advanced in their careers, who have really made a big impact, especially where in Vancouver, where we live. I mean, one of the old heads of, and she's not old, but she's a previous head of the BC Technology Association, is a very successful female entrepreneur in technology. And so regardless of the age group and regardless of the industry, I do believe now there are some very strong women in all industries that we do get to see now, and are becoming more visible.
Yeah, and that's nice. And if you're anyone wondering out there, how do I get talking to these people? Couple bits of advice to give is, if you already have a podcast, or you have a magazine, or you have some way that you can interview them, that's a really great way. I wanted to interview you, Andrea, not because I want you to be my role model, but because I feel like what you have to share is important for the listeners to hear, even if they don't want to get into tech. And other things that you can do are find out what that person's really, what they value. So maybe it's a certain charity, maybe they have a new book coming out. If you can reach out to them and give them kudos for what that is, and offer to support in what they're doing. So share some of their stuff online, just get on their radar, so that when you do reach out, they have some, like, a good feeling about you, seeing your name on their blog, or seeing you sharing their business, their company's things, or congratulating them on an award. And then sometimes you have to pay to play. You might have to pay for that gala ticket to go and hear that person speak, to be able to have a minute with them. So just be creative in that way, and know that LinkedIn is also your friend for all the professionals out there. So you've mentioned family.
Yes.
How do you manage the demands of work and family?
So yeah, that's also a good question. I dislike it when people use the word balance.
Yep.
I don't think it's balance. I think it's integration. How do you fit all
Yes.
of the not conflicting, but all of the competing priorities in, and how do you integrate them? And so, for me, I think a big part of it has been learning to let go of the guilt on both ends, right? The guilt about not being the company leader that can work 20-hour days. I mean, I can if there's a crisis, but that's not my go-to day schedule. And not being the parent who is going to be at every pickup and drop off, and being able
Exactly.
to outsource. I do outsource a lot. So using, I'm fortunate that I am in a position where I can have people help me. I can have people help with cleaning and with before and after school care and preparing lunches and those things that I'm not able to integrate into my schedule.
Yes.
And so when I first started doing that, I felt bad about it. I felt like I should be able to do it all. I should be able to find the time or somehow be faster at it all. And it was causing me a lot of stress. And I wasn't, the mornings were incredibly stressful. I was finding the mornings I was leaving the house grumpy, irritated, and ushering my daughter to daycare and having short conversations. And when I got help, when I ended up bringing someone in to help me with those pieces, the interactions I have now are much calmer. They're I think they're much more valuable for me and for what I'm capable of. And yeah, and then deciding that maybe sometimes turn off the mom groups. You feel like you're missing out, or you're missing things that you're supposed to be doing. So
yeah, I actually had to leave a mom's group that I was part of because they were all about organic and no batteries in toys and homemade everything. And I just, not that they judged me, but I felt less than. That I wasn't doing the elimination communication. I was using diapers. And so every time we met, I was the only one with diapers on my kid. So it was all these things. And I thought, you know what, this is just not healthy for me. I need to be around my peers who are parenting a similar way to me, or who have a business as well. And so who understand. So yeah, I get that. But I like how you said integration. So integrating things.
yeah.
And just like you would a business, if you're the CEO of your family, you need to delegate some of the things, some of the items, and which can you delegate and which ones will you not delegate. So you're not going to delegate the reading of the story. You're not going to delegate the cuddles, but those certain things that are really important for you. And I love that I'm hearing is that it increased the quality of the time and the quality of your interactions.
Yes, it did. And I agree. There's certain things that I don't delegate. One of my commitments to myself is to be home for dinner, right? To be home for dinner. And I'm not 100%, complete on that. But when I'm not home for dinner, it's normally because I've decided, hey, you know what? I need to go for a swim. I'm not home for dinner because I'm working. I'm not home for dinner because I need to recharge or refresh or get my mental space into a better place so that when I am home, at 7:30 after swimming, I can do stories and I can do cuddles and I can be there and not be sidetracked or distracted or running through challenges or things that are happening in the business in my mind. But it is something that I do prioritize. If I'm going to miss dinner, it's not going to be for work. unless I'm traveling for work, which I'm not doing
Yes.
right now.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
None of us are.
No.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear that you actually prioritize time for yourself and that you're using self-awareness to really check in with what you're needing at any given moment. I don't think we do that enough because we don't have downtime in that time where we're just quiet. And so, there's a podcast on when we're driving to and from work. And then we've got a couple minutes between meetings. And so we're on our phone checking email, and there's no time, no downtime to really listen to our bodies and our minds and our mental health and what we need. So that's great to hear that you're doing that. So final question here.
Okay.
We've talked about your past. We've talked about where you currently are. What about your future? What are your goals for the future?
So my goals for the future, I'm planning on, and it's sort of part of the company plan, is for me to be taking over as CEO in the next probably 2 to 3 years. So working towards becoming, so right now I'm general manager and working towards becoming CEO of the business.
Yep.
So that's kind of in the next 3 to 5 years. That's a big part of my personal development focus. And then beyond that, I really want to grow this business. It's a great business. We were founded in 93. We're very well established. And now with, machine learning and AI, and what my developers, they actually don't like those two terms. They use convolutional neural networks, but
Of course.
it's machine learning.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, I don't even know. But there's some really cool, interesting things that are out there in technology and in the science and the physics of what can be done is sort of, it feels limitless to me. So, really wanting to bring the company into those new developments, and we're already doing it, but grow and push and thrive more in those areas. And so in terms of the business, that's, it's all about research and development and innovation, and being the CEO who's helping choose that path that we take. And then, in the family realm, just see my kids grow up. Be there at the dance recitals and swimming lessons as much as I can be, and get to be a part of that, and work towards just sort of seeing as much of it and being part of as much of it as I can, and hopefully grow some pretty great human beings.
Oh, that's so lovely. And is there something around maybe 40 under 40 or something like that?
So yes, I have this very strange, it's not strange, I guess, but I do kind of have this like internal mini goal that I would love to be in the 40 under 40. And actually just last week, one of my friends got honored, Christian Ham got honored to be part of 40 under 40. And so I'm super excited for him.
Okay, so if anyone listening, if you have a connection, if you can nominate Andrea, do it. And if you're wondering how to connect with her in order to be able to do that, I will include in the show notes both her personal and business LinkedIn profile, as well as the website for Photosat, so that people can check out more of what you do and learn more about it. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, to be able to share what you do, how you got there, and really your vision for the future for not only yourself and your business, but for girls and women in this industry. Any final words here before we tie a bow on it?
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure to be here. And I think just kind of in conclusion, it is a really exciting time to be a woman in STEM or in technology in general. We have so many great role models now, and we're in a position, at least in the Western world, we're in a position where, those glass ceilings are shattering all over the place.
Yeah.
And so, it's just exciting. So,
yeah. I'm excited for the girls coming into it as well.
Mhm.
So thank you very much again. Thank you to all the listeners. You know who you are, and you are the reason why I get to keep doing this, and why I look for amazing speakers like Andrea Krupa to share a little bit into their worlds and their struggles that they've had and their successes, and to bring you tips like how to own your own feelings and not let other people push them onto you, and using your intuition to do that. So please make sure you subscribe, share this episode with someone out there who is interested in STEM or needs to hear about a powerful and successful woman in the tech industries. So make sure that you also write a review if you felt that this was helpful, because other people read the reviews and it helps them to know if they should listen to the episode or not. So until next time, stay dynamic.
Thank you, Dynamic Women, for joining us today. Please hop on over to iTunes to subscribe and leave us a review. Who do you know who needs to hear our message? We'd love it if you'd share our channel with your friends and family. If you're ready to be more dynamic, have more balance and more success, head over to www.dynamicwomenclub.com/free gift for your Key to Success book. Stay dynamic.